Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. Bloomberg Tech is live from coast to coast with Caroline Hyde in New York and Ed Ludlow in San Francisco.
This is Bloomberg Tech. Coming up, Microsoft accuses Chinese hackers of exploiting vulnerabilities in its SharePoint software that have led to breaches worldwide.
Plus, OpenAI and Oracle deepen their Stargate data center partnership to power AI workloads. But no sign of SoftBank to help finance the US infrastructure.
And NXP gives a not-so-bullish third-quarter forecast, suggesting the chip makers still contending with a turbulent industry in the face of tariffs. Microsoft's our top story in a blog post saying that state-sponsored Chinese hackers are behind what's happening, and in particular, the stock reacting negatively early in the session, Caro, normalizing a little bit, but we've got to get into it.
We do. Let's stick with that Microsoft story. Bloomberg's Jake Bleiberg joins us for the latest. And these are known state actors, two of them, and then one Chinese-based actor, it would seem.
Yes, that's exactly right. Microsoft said this morning that two groups backed by the Chinese government, Linen Typhoon, and another group have been responsible for some of the exploitation of this vulnerability in its SharePoint software. We've also heard from other cybersecurity firms that they're seeing multiple different organizations sort of hack into businesses and governments based on this vulnerability.
Jake, the top priority right now seems to be identifying the victims. Do we know what the kind of net result of this hacking activity is? Who's been impacted?
We know that the impacted organizations are ones that hosted SharePoint on their own servers, and that seems to be a real smattering of different groups, government agencies, businesses, other organizations all over the globe. We know that governments have been hit in the Middle East and in Europe and here in the United States. We also know of businesses and state-level agencies that have also been hacked into.
Microsoft, for its part, say investigations into other actors are also ongoing when it comes to the exploits. We can currently see what they've put out in a blog post. But more broadly, they acted swiftly to try and patch the issue. But once in a server, that is the key concern.
Exactly. We've seen warnings from cybersecurity companies that you don't just need to patch, you need to sort of hunt for whether your systems were penetrated and what they might have been taken. And a source told Bloomberg yesterday that the hackers, once getting in some instances, are stealing login credentials, usernames, passwords, tokens, and that suggests that they may be trying to exploit that information to launch other attacks.
Bloomberg's Jake Bleiberg out of New York City. Thank you very much. Meanwhile, shares of NXP Semiconductor are trading lower today. The company posting third quarter forecasts that were less bullish than investors anticipated. Then they went on to talk about the state of play in the automotive industry, which is 50% or more of their revenue. Bloomberg's Ian King, who leads our chip coverage, is here. It's actually a pretty simple story, right? Away from all the AI stuff, there's been a glut in inventory on automotive chips. NXP saying, look, it takes time to work through them. But for that industry and that key customer, the world's a bit uncertain as well.
It absolutely is, and we'll hear from Texas Instruments in a similar vein later today. The cross-currents are everything's supposed to be getting better. This kind of glut that we've had over the last couple of years is supposed to be going away. So we want, if you're an investor, you want them to be more bullish. You want them to be a bit more reassuring. That's not what happened from NXP. They said things are still hanging around.
And Ian, almost bullish is the wrong word for it when revenue is down 6% for NXP, and actually revenues have been down quarter after quarter, right?
Yeah, I mean, what we'll have to look at, and this is why I think it's going to be useful to have Texas Instruments reporting today, sort of back to back, is this a customer-related thing? Is NXP basically supplying automotive companies that are struggling more than others? Texas Instruments is a much broader supplier, has a bigger customer list and a bigger set of products, so that'll give us a sense of whether this is a general automotive malaise, whether this is China-related, whether this is Europe-related, and we'll have a much clearer picture later today.
I am going to dig into this a bit later in the program, but the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index, is underperforming generally, and NVIDIA and AMD are big drags on that. The read-through between NXP and those two is difficult for me to see. But generally speaking, away from those kind of ultra specialized and even analog chips, things are quite robust still.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, you talk about the index has done pretty well this year. Yeah. There's a lot of money has been put to work. Everything we've heard so far, and we'll hear more on that vein as the earnings season unfolds, is there's a lot of spending still going on these large AI infrastructure systems, and we've heard nothing that's telling us that that's not going to continue. And that's really what's going to be the most important thing, and that's what's driven the stocks so far. Analog has been a slightly different story, but again, analog benefits from this server build out as well. You need these power-related chips, you need these microcontrollers as well.
Ian King, always with all the context, so appreciate it. Thank you. Look, let's dive deeper into the tech earnings, the vibe in the market right now. Anna Rathman's with us, founder and CEO of Grenadilla Advisory. Anna, your take here is that, yes, we're perhaps pulling back on the day somewhat, NXP not a resounding feeling of optimism, but we're still near all-time highs and we've still got a $4 trillion Nvidia on our hands.
Yeah, good morning. Markets are definitely, the valuations are high. There's no slicing that in a different way. But I guess, you have to look at tech differently than we used to. So a lot of allocators and wealth advisors out there, we've been taught to look at tech as a growth sector. Perhaps it's more than that. So the AI component is definitely tech, but maybe there's also a quality factor there as well. Got healthy balance sheets, great cash flow, especially those mega companies, mega cap companies. It's also got a defensive sector a characteristic as well. We learned that we cannot operate this economy and our society without tech infrastructure as well as software. So I think that when we're looking at tech, we have to look at it from multiple angles in order to perhaps try to explain some of this valuation. It's not just about AI froth, it's much more than that.
But what's been interesting is the AI winners have powered forward on 2025, and those winners have been deemed, well, the Metas of this world, the Nvidias of this world. Apple left for dust. In some ways, Alphabet has been a laggard too. How do we set up into Wednesday when we start to get a couple of those Mag 7 names?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a bifurcation in those Mag 7 names. And right now it looks like the people who have really invested and gone forward with AIs are definitely winning. Now, Alphabet, for example, will have different challenges, right? Not only do they have some legal challenges, but, I don't know about you, but when I talk to my friends, they've stopped using Google as a search engine. They're using ChatGPT. And I know that's just a few people around me and perhaps you, but those things can actually catch up. And I know Gemini is improving, but I think that's a real competitor there. And so AI is going to be more important going forward for some of these Mag 7 names. And I wouldn't expect disappointing report from them, but certainly I think investors can read between the lines.
Anna, what's curious about this week is that on Wednesday, Alphabet and Tesla post their earnings results, right? Somewhat analogous companies, some differences. And on the same day, we'll hear from the president about his vision for AI and American AI. It's going to be a wild ride for investors this week, isn't it?
Well, anytime anyone from the government talks about technology and AI and even Bitcoin or blockchain, I get a little nervous. Because I think we have to tread very carefully here. We don't want to get in the way of innovation, and yet we want to protect consumers, right? So it's going to be it's going to be a balancing act for anybody from the government, from the White House, talking about AI and how America is going to be involved in the development of AI. I would go in with a little bit of a cautious view. And frankly, I'm expecting a lot of lofty statements, but the question always is, how does this actually translate down to the day-to-day and actual software and make difference in our productivity?
Let's bring it back to today's news. What did you learn about the near-term and quantifiable impact of tariffs? You had names like General Motors and NXP show us that actually something's happening here.
Yeah, I mean, something is happening there. We're talking about actual money, right? I mean, so for last week, if you think about the CPI and consumer sentiment, you didn't really see it, right? but you are seeing it in earnings. This is actual cash flow impacts. So I think this is going to trickle in as the quarter goes and give us a better view of exactly what areas of the economy are being impacted by tariffs, who is actually assuming some of those costs. Because GM actually came out and said, we don't want to pass down all the costs to the consumers. So it'll be interesting to see how those things get diversified into the supply chain and how GM and other companies actually manage those challenges.
And going back to tariffs is all about the geopolitics that is currently involved in technology investing. I think of the geopolitics between the US and China. I think of the latest news out of Microsoft blaming China for a hack. How much do you factor that into your current investment thesis? How much can you price that sort of geopolitics in?
Yeah, I mean, I never thought that this trade talk with China was going to be simple or smooth, right? And this is yet another twist in the plot. I would hold that August 1st deadline date really loosely in your hands because, it was April 1st and then or July 9th and then now it's August 1st. I think that the Trump administration, as well as China, I mean, they have a lot at stake here. So I don't think the deadline really matters. I think we're going to be negotiating until we actually get to a good place for both countries. And August 1st might come and go.
Anna Rathman, founder and CEO of Grenadilla Advisory. Thank you very much. So coming up, Oracle and OpenAI are set to expand their partnership, opening up more data centers to satiate AI demand. We have the details next. This is Bloomberg Tech.
Oracle, along with OpenAI, have announced that they're set to develop 4.5 gigawatts of additional US data center capacity. Let's bring in Bloomberg's Brody Ford now on how the evolution of Stargate is going and who's involved and who isn't, because we'll get to SoftBank in a moment, the fact they don't seem to be on the page. But this is this commitment to, have 10 gigawatts by 4 years' time? They really seem to be building it out now.
Right, and we can't forget a gigawatt. I mean, we're throwing these numbers around now, but, a couple of years ago, you would never hear about a gigawatt data center, and now we're talking about 4.5. I mean, each one of those is about equivalent to a nuclear reactor. And so a 4.5 gigawatt data center deal that's across the country, this is an unprecedented cloud deal. I mean, this is likely the largest single cloud deal ever signed. And so, right, if you're Oracle, if you've been trying to tell people for many years that you're going to be a real cloud infrastructure player, this is a pretty resounding sign of confidence from the most important AI company at the moment.
Brody, the way we look at this is it's confirmation of our prior reporting on the projects, but also, as Kara alluded to, some clarity on the bits that SoftBank is and is not financing.
Absolutely. So it's very interesting because in January we saw, Larry Ellison and Sam Altman and SoftBank sitting at the White House. Today, SoftBank doesn't appear to be too involved. They're not saying we're out for good, but this 4.5 gigawatts, which likely gets us to around $30 billion a year, SoftBank is not involved in financing. Where does the rest of that money come from? That's going to be a big question in the following months, right? Because OpenAI makes a lot of money. They're not making that much money to be able to just spend all this themselves.
We're going to dig into more news from Oracle in a minute, but I just want to understand where we think these data centers are going to be. Do we have much detail on the timescale here as well?
Every time I ask a source where the next data center is going to be, they tell me a different state. They're evaluating a lot of different states, a lot of different sites. If you've read an article that says, hey, they want to develop a multi-gigawatt data center here, odds are that Stargate has evaluated this site. So I'm keeping my eyes out.
Slightly smaller scale, but Oracle's also in talks around $100 million a year Paramount Skydance deal. What do we need to know about that one?
What you need to know is if your dad is Larry Ellison and he helps you buy something, you're going to have to kind of help buy some stuff from him as well, right? I mean, Larry Ellison's son, David Ellison, has been in the works to buy Paramount for a while, and they're already having negotiations that assuming that deal goes through, Paramount will be a major OCI customer. They're going to put all of their CBS, MTV, it's a lot of assets, a lot of gigabytes, and they're going to be on Oracle servers.
Bloomberg's Brody Ford.
Thank you.
Really on top of this story. Thank you very much. Okay, we have another story. Some updates in the $4 billion fraud case against the estate of deceased Autonomy founder Mike Lynch. A London judge ruled that HPE lost close to $1 billion after buying Autonomy. Lynch's estate will face a claim for much of that sum after he lost a London fraud case along with the former CFO of Autonomy. The ruling suggests HPE will likely reclaim just a fraction of its total claim. The ruling comes less than a year after Lynch drowned when his yacht sank in a storm off the coast of Sicily. Poseidon has announced it's raised $15 million in a seed round led by A16Z Crypto as the company looks to tackle bottlenecks in AI training data, including IP-safe resources. This particularly aimed at training data for robotics, multimodal models, and physical AI. Here with more is S.Y. Lee, Poseidon president and CEO of Story, the incubator behind Poseidon. The state of play is really clear, right? AI models have become commoditized. Compute costs have come down. But the bottleneck, as you see it and many others see it, is the data. You have a solution.
Yes, as you just wanted to put that into context again, because now, the previous generation of models were scraping the internet's data, which is, you can scrape it all. But now AI is going to the physical world. It's the multi-model models, right? It's a robotics model, it's a video model, audio model. And the really real bottleneck is the data, as you said, because, you can't now scrape it illegally on the internet. And a lot of times this data is very private. There's a lot of IP safety concerns. And in that world, how do you coordinate the collection, labeling, curating of the data? And we're using actually crypto incentives to actually coordinate that massive label coordination.
So my next question was, why is Andreessen's crypto team backing you and not an AI specialist partner or a different firm?
First of all, my co-founder is head of robotics at the UT Austin, and he's a big AI specialist who's been kind of working on this data licensing and data collection for the last 10 years. And even he thought about how do you incentivize data collection with data dividends. So he is an AI expert in this realm. But the reason why we are we think this is so timely is 40 days ago actually Meta semi-acquired, actually, as you know, Scale AI.
Right.
And that left a very huge vacuum in the space for competitors and new players to come in. And if you look at Scale AI, I'm not trying to criticize, but they have to, make a lot of shell companies, work with shell companies in developing countries to actually coordinate this kind of digital sweatshop to make that happen. But the beauty of crypto is that it's still really good at coordinating incentives at a global scale and pay them instantaneously with stable coins or other type of crypto tokens, right? And that is a very, very huge advantage, number one, right? And number two, not only that, what crypto and blockchain does is it is good at putting this data and IP on an immutable ledger and track and attribute it and license it with smart contracts. And those two are very, very important advantages of crypto, even where my co-founder, AI specialist, wants to actually use this technology.
S.Y., let's just go to the basics of the data that is needed here. I can see the crypto read across. I think of Axie Infinity, the game that went bananas in the Philippines years ago, how people wanted to play because they earned money in tokens via playing this crypto native game. You're going to use people, incentivize people to sort of video themselves in the real world that then ultimately helps Tesla build Optimus in the real world?
Yes, actually, you hit on the right comparable. Axie Infinity was an example of coordinating this massive number of people in the Philippines and other types of developing other developing countries to actually play games to earn tokens, right? In the same way, now when Tesla wants to train its humanoid robot, they even if you scrape the entire internet's data, you can't actually have a Tesla robot holding a coffee cup, right? Because you need 1 million angles of data, egocentric video footage, 1 million different types of settings, and that kind of data, instead of actually hiring a shell company and having the shell company hire tens of thousands of people, you can coordinate this at a mass scale and then instantaneously with crypto incentive. That's what we're doing. Right?
And let's talk about the end demand here. How many companies, who is your ultimate provider? How do you then sell this IP safe AI training data?
Yeah, the reason why it's IP safe is that everyone who are actually contributing data, anyone can contribute this data anywhere around the world, right? And then actually set their licensing usage terms on the blockchain. And we are, at the moment, we're now completely decentralized. And we are now going to launch a decentralized DPIN app, a Decentralized Physical Infrastructure app in fall that actually collects data. Puts this on the blockchain with the licensing terms in place. But at the moment, we're now actually acting as an agent to actually secure these contracts. And we already have we've already signed a contract, and we cannot disclose it at the moment.
Right.
And then in the robotics realm.
Well, quickly, yes. If Scale AI, the scenario left a vacuum, and you look to occupy that vacuum, how many phone calls have you had from the other frontier model makers that you could fit into their organization in the same way? Just 30 seconds.
Actually, many organizations, and I was really surprised as C-stage company, they were willing to work with us because a lot of them were telling us that they were dropping contracts from Scale AI.
But I meant in terms of you being acquired or you joining a bigger group.
We don't have any plan. And we think the advantage of this open system is that we can work with any AI partners.
S.Y. Lee, Poseidon and Story. Great to have you on today. Now, let's just turn back a minute for what's going viral, because Tesla's futuristic diner in LA is complete with a drive-in charging experience. Now, the sleek retro vibe diner is also replete with two 66-foot mega screens and a rooftop skypad, and a prototype of Optimus. The robot is serving popcorn. Apparently, that was at the pre-launch event for the Hollywood venue. Tesla claims it's the largest urban supercharger in the world. Let's just talk about another key player that's got earnings later this week, Alphabet. Well, Google, we understand, is seeking to recruit news organizations for a new licensing project related to AI. It's all according to sources, which could be a big win for the struggling media companies. Bloomberg's Hannah Miller joins us now. Is this some sort of Google capitulation here? Because we've seen some deals done by other AI players, but Google's always sat on the side.
I think Google is playing catch up here. We've seen big companies like OpenAI and Microsoft strike these massive licensing deals with news organizations. And Google, they've been sitting on the sidelines. They haven't been doing that as much. So this could be them, testing the waters, trying to build better relationships with media companies as the AI race heats up.
Hannah, one of our sources said that in one case, Google will launch this kind of pilot with 20 different news orgs. You cover TMT, right? From the news perspective, is this like a cash cow, a great gold mine just to sell data and bring in some money through a new mechanism?
A lot of people in the industry are saying this is a temporary Band-Aid. Yes, we can get some money from these big companies at the start, but looking long term, many journalists feel like AI is a threat to their business. You have people in the arts, you have people at major media companies concerned about the effect AI will have on their jobs.
Bloomberg's Hannah Miller out of New York, thank you very much. Now, Netflix and Disney are both taking steps into the somewhat controversial world of AI video creation with software from Runway AI. Bloomberg's Rachel Metz brings us the story. Interesting one about this is that in the earnings context, this has already come up, particularly for Netflix, right, in recent weeks. But what's the controversy and what is the actual tool here? Like, what is it that a Netflix would need AI to do?
So as you mentioned, Netflix said on their earnings call just last week that they're using AI, and they also mentioned a production that they had used it in. So companies like Netflix, what they could do with this software, in theory, is they could maybe lower some of the costs for special effects. So they'd use a model like Runway. Runway's top-of-the-line model is Gen 4. They also have some models that aim to reproduce motion capture software and without using all the fancy and clunky hardware that comes with it. So the idea would be to save costs here. and to do some shots that perhaps would have been impossible previously without using AI software.
I think we learned from Ted Sarandos over at Netflix that it was previously using to sort of simulate a building collapse in, I think it was an Argentinian particular visual effects company, but it wasn't Runway. Usually, we understand, according to people familiar, who at Runway have they worked with and what have they been able to produce thus far? Because they're actually outcompeting Hollywood or West Coast-based visual effects companies.
Yeah, so Runway works with a number of different companies. We also know that Disney has been testing out their software. Runway has a deal with Lionsgate. They're working in a field that's increasingly crowded, and there are so much larger players. OpenAI has its own video software. Google does as well. And what I would expect to see is companies like Netflix probably, they said they did not create that scene with Runway. Well, that implies there's at least one other company that they're working with the software from, right? So I would expect to see that actually as these companies dip their toes into the water of AI video software more and more. You'll probably see them try out a bunch of different ones, and maybe they will end up using a bunch of different tools for different things. I think it really just depends on what they find most useful and what their production teams do. Is it live action? Is it animation? And what tools work the best for those sorts of things?
Let's try and get the big picture vision. This is what Ted Sarandos actually said on Netflix's earnings call.
We remain convinced that AI represents an incredible opportunity to help creators make films and series better, not just cheaper. There are these AI-powered creator tools. So this is real people doing real work with better tools. Our creators are already seeing the benefits in production through pre-visualization and shot planning work, and certainly visual effects.
So, Richard, that's how Netflix sees it. If you are a Runway or another AI company that's working on text-to-video tools, right, is the movie industry or television what they're working toward? Is that who they want to serve?
Absolutely. I mean, they want to work with professionals who are working in these fields, and they want to work with the studios. I think what's also important to keep in mind is this technology is really controversial because there are a lot of people that perhaps would or would not be wanting to use this software that are concerned that this is going to cut into their livelihoods. And I think that's a really real concern. So that's part of why the studios are being, I think they're a little bit hesitant to be public right now about how and if they're using this software because the stakes are really high.
Bloomberg's Rachel Metz, thank you very much. Kara, what you got?
It's time now for Talking Tech. And first up, Ed, NVIDIA, the chip challenger, Furiosa AI, has finalized a deal with LG AI Research. Now, the South Korean chip designer won final approval for its AI chip Renegade after 7 months of evaluations. Now, in March, remember, the company rejected an $800 million takeover from Meta, choosing instead to grow the business as an independent company. Plus, BlackRock has told staff not to bring company devices to China, including iPhones and iPads. That's all according to a memo seen by Bloomberg News. The move really underscores growing concern among some global firms about employees working there and data security. And Glade Brook Capital Partners has raised $550 million from investors for its fourth fund. The firm has stakes in SpaceX, Perplexity, Stripe, among other startups, and it plans to continue backing fintech, AI, e-commerce, space, and defense companies. Ed.
Okay, coming up, tech and energy leaders head to Washington to discuss how the US can win in the AI race. We'll take a look at where global AI competition stands now. Caroline, you pointed this one out earlier today. It's a name I've not looked at in a while, OpenDoor. Okay, the stock's down 1.6% in the here and now, but look at some of the swings in the session. Bloomberg writing about some of the activity, some of the halts. OpenDoor is the latest meme stock. It says it on the Bloomberg terminal. No, seriously. Go check it out. We'll be right back. This is Bloomberg Tech.
President Trump in a bilateral meeting with President of the Republic of the Philippines. I want to go straight out to Mike Shepard. There was a lot discussed there. DOJ investigations being queried. Some referring to potential, as Trump continues to see it, of an election rigging, as he said. But we've also had so much more when it comes to the trade, when we think about China, when we think about magnets, as he says, flowing out succinctly from the country. Can you just wrap up what we were hearing from there?
Well, first, the very first question the president took, of course, was on the Fed, something of very close interest to our audience. And the president stopped short of calling for Jerome Powell to resign as Fed chair. He did keep up his criticism of Powell's handling of interest rate policy, saying that it's been too late and too slow to lower interest rates. And this is a theme he has returned to again and again in these moments when visiting foreign leaders join him in the Oval Office. Just last week, we saw him hit these notes with the visiting Crown Prince of Bahrain. We heard it again today with the president of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos. We also heard the president talk about China, which of course is a crucial topic between the U.S. and the Philippines. As China's one of China's closest neighbors, the Philippines has to balance this relationship. And we heard Marcos and Trump both talk about this. And Trump also indicated he had taken an invitation from President Xi Jinping of China and was looking at possibly accepting it and would make a decision on that in the near future. Carol.
Okay, Bloomberg's Mike Shepard, thank you very much. We also expect to hear from the president later this week in a speech on AI. Let's get from DC to the global perspective of how the AI race is unfolding. Nikolaus Lang is with us for that, managing director, senior partner, Boston Consulting Group, and the global leader of BCG's think tank, the BCG Henderson Institute. We've covered a lot in this program how codified Europe's framework is around AI. We're waiting on America to follow suit in many respects. The president will outline a vision on Wednesday. How would you summarize the differences of approach between those two jurisdictions?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And I think when we look at the global geopolitics of AI, what we have seen here in our research is that we see two superpowers. Yeah, on one side, the US, on the other side, China. I think leading in talent, compute power, foundation models. And then you have Europe and the Middle East, which are these middle powers, challenging the superpowers. And I think that's where we will see the dynamic unfold in the years to come. You just mentioned the approach to regulation. I think this is different. I think in the US, it's different in Europe, it's different in China. And the reality is that we need to adapt to these three constituencies and these three approaches to regulation.
Very briefly, Nikolaus, the companies you advise, where are they trying to navigate? Are they looking at expanding data centers within the Middle East, within the US? Where are people tending to default right now for their expertise?
Yeah, well, I think what we see in AI is a fragmented world as we see it also in other parts of geopolitics. And I think companies realize that they need to be present in the different regions, both with data centers, with AI talent, and also with capital investment. And I think that's what makes this geopolitics of AI space so interesting, because I think we have a huge dynamic, a regional dynamic, which is very different from what we see in other areas.
We're going to be hearing much more about that regional dynamic in an event later this week, of course, over in DC. Nikolaus Lang, fascinating, from the Boston Consulting Group. We wish we had more time. Meanwhile, though, that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Tech. Ed?
Yeah, don't forget, check out the podcast where you can recap all of today's Bloomberg stories and a lot more that was going on. You know where to find it. It's on all the Bloomberg platforms, the Bloomberg Terminal, and online on Apple, Spotify, and iHeart. This is Bloomberg Tech.